Well, okay, I might as well just restate what it was that started the. It's very brief because I typed it out. I said that I don't think that theatricality and honesty are mutually exclusive. On the contrary, I think that sometimes, the way to be honest, requires theatricality. Like that you need to be theatrical in order to be honest, in order to express something honestly, may involve a certain kind of theatricality. Then the other premise just linked to that was the idea that democracy itself involves theater and theatricality, and it has since ancient Athens. So I do see that kind of performance and theatricality of things. So, now I know he asked me a question before that was in response to, and then I'm not sure what his objection is to that, but that's what he said, is that he's for some reason he reacts negatively to this generalization.
I can understand why you might say that, but what I was trying to argue is that, like, if you do stay, like, if you start being true to yourself, like, have you ever experienced that, like, by being calm and relaxed and not using theatricality to prove your point, that you will have nothing to lose, so why do you need to use theatricality?
Okay, so I think there is something to lose. I think there is a real disadvantage to not being theatrical. And you see that in democracy in ancient times and still today. So, in American government, in the American system of Congress and the Senate, when people were arguing against cigarettes, that cigarettes cause cancer, they brought in heartbreaking examples of people whose lives had been destroyed by cigarettes, and they stood there in front of Congress and they broke down weeping. I mean, this is a significant form of theatricality. Seatbelts, trying to get laws about seatbelts, even the debates legally about the side effects of certain medicines. They bring in people whose lives have been destroyed, or father whose daughter was killed, and they give really passionate voice to that. Another infamous example, by the way, in putting together the case for the Iraq War, they brought in someone who had allegedly, was talking about suffering in the Iraq War, and it was later revealed that this was to some extent a phony or misleading instance. Just within modern American politics, the Vietnam War, Iraq War, and so on, the theatricality is a really significant part of democracy. Now, could I come on YouTube and talk about vegan activism in a completely dispassionate or even robotic way? I could. It's a choice not to. Could I talk about my own divorce or my own personal life in a dispassionate way? I could. It's a choice not to. So, I'm just saying I'm someone who's consciously aware of that, and there's a certain level of theatricality in my YouTube videos, and there is in real life also. I would say, as a very real example that many people in here will have experienced, what if you are begging with a police officer or a border guard, someone who has real direct power over you, power of life and death and power to fuck up your life? What if you have to convince someone in that position to do the right thing, or that you're honest? Being robotic or dispassionate or something, or not expressing your case emotionally is not in your favor. So I think theatricality is an important part of public life, including YouTube and including formal democracy and informal situations we're all in. Sure.
Right. I understand what you said. I guess I'm arguing against using like when you had the debate with Isel Buster, you were being aggressive towards him. Do you felt that you could have been more calm and just said just proved your point without?
Right. I could have, but it's a choice. So as I've outlined, it's a choice.
Have you thought about what he may feel after if you do it, if you be aggressive like that? Maybe he may not take your point, he may start to be more defensive, and then have you ever thought okay, no, I should just relax, tell him properly so that he doesn't try to get the wrong idea?
Yes, and does he think about how I feel? Right. What about how I feel? Does that count for nothing? So this is a one-to-one consideration. There are his feelings, there are also my feelings involved. The other consideration is the audience. what the performance means for the audience. I don't think I'm going to just, one more sentence. I don't think living a lie is good for me. I don't think it's good for him, and I don't think it's good for the audience either. I don't. I think that authenticity and really sharing how you feel about things, I think is good for me, is good for him, and is good for the audience. That's how I honestly feel about that.
I agree with you. And however, when like your back and forth conversation with Isel Buster in the chat, like what I saw from it is that maybe he, like, I watch your videos and what you say is thought provoking. So maybe I feel like he may not have seen this side from you while you were debating him, and maybe like, yeah, he.
I understand your concern. But I mean, I think another kind of criterion to bring to this would be to ask. So this isn't the question you're asking. This would be a stronger question to demand of me. You could ask, Isel, your theatrical behavior, do you think it makes you more friends or makes you more enemies? Or like, is this a good way to make friends? So I just say that would be your same kind of objection, but more forcefully stated. And my answer to that is, by being really honest with people, I make the right friends. Because if I came on, if I were phony or I really pretended to be someone I'm not, then the people who might want to be friends with me, they wouldn't be the right people. So people get to see, hey, I'm really passionate about this issue. I'm really indifferent to this other issue. I'm pissed off about this or that. And then, the right people will respond to that in the right way. And, I really accept that, I can't be friends with everyone. And that, I'm going to alienate some people that way. It's true. But like to give a very real example, I would have more friends if I pretended to be a socialist, or even if I pretended to be a communist sympathizer or communist supporter. I really would. And you can look at, veganism is very left-wing. Within my lifetime, it would have been as a winning strategy, I could have been a phony far leftist of one kind or another, whether I was an SJW or a socialist or what have you. Even now, there's pressure on me to just be an uncritical supporter of Bernie Sanders. And I'm not. Some things I agree with Bernie Sanders, not others. And I'm really going to keep it honest. But, I have one new friend now who's actually a member of the Conservative Party, which I thought would never happen. Not a lot of conservatives like me either. But, the right people who look at that performance and can see my feeling and see what I feel, and what I feel as well as what I think, the right people will become my friends. And by being phony or being insincere, I don't think that would lead to those positive outcomes. So, I understand your objection, but what you're positing fundamentally would be that having a kind of emotionally neutral delivery would be advantageous in all situations, or maybe just most situations. And, I think that has very real disadvantages also.
I agree with you. I can understand what you're saying, and you gave the example where, like, I think they were like using theatricality, like some example about the people dying from smoking, and I think that's like, that wouldn't like provoke. I don't. Maybe I think that has a less chance to provoke someone as opposed to being aggressive towards them. And then I have this question for you: is how can you be in a way that, like, if you are going to use aggression, but then you think about it, like, maybe I shouldn't do it, how would you effectively make these people understand your point, even though you know that, like, I could make more friends if I was just not doing the right thing, if I'm trying to sympathize with them, but that's not what you're trying to do, but you are trying to make them try to understand your point without them feeling like they're being attacked.
Okay, it's kind of a long, complex question. As I say, it's true if you took a more insincere approach, you'd make more friends, but they would be the wrong friends, right? So, an example, I don't even know if Ask Yourself, I don't know if Isaac would recognize this name, but, Privileged Vegan and Mexi, I made very harsh criticisms of them on my channel. And I know at least from Privileged Vegan that my criticism of her did shock her. I mean, she responded to it negatively. She was not pleased to hear the criticism I directed her. That's now a couple of years ago. So if you make the argument, oh well, why don't you be insincere? Why not take another approach? If I really regard someone as an immoral person, for example, and I'm expressing my frustration with their morality, for example, if I think they hold a position that's racist or that's making excuses for mass murder or this kind of thing, I don't really see how it can be coherent, even like on a psychological level, for me to dissimulate being someone other than I am and feeling something other than I am for the value of an abstract friendship that I wouldn't value myself. And at that point, I think, again, you have to remember, if we're talking about only two people, if we're not including the audience in the equation, I mean, like right now, there's an audience here whom we may be boring, which is too bad. It might be a more entertaining, debate for them if I were more angry and aggressive with you. But if you're just considering the two people, then I don't really think it makes sense to only value the emotions of one of the two people. Like if I have to suffer so that the other person doesn't suffer, and the kind of suffering we're talking about here is a very, marginal suffering. Like, for example, if what you're saying is it makes a communist uncomfortable to be reminded that their ideology is linked to tens of millions of deaths, or indeed, I've also criticized neo-Nazis very harshly on my channel, that it upsets them to be confronted with this kind of truth or this kind of counter-argument. I just don't buy it. And now, of course, the other thing that's ridiculous about being a vegan in the world is that, of course, there are people I have a really serious moral conflict with the vast majority of people on Earth. So, to give you an example, very recently, a lot of you will have seen those videos. I had videos harshly criticizing an ex-vegan called Wacko Jacko Vegano. Now, every other YouTube channel, I think, except me, had this kind of loving, soft approach of like, well, he's gone back to eating meat, but maybe he could come back. They all really treated him with kids' gloves. And I made a video really harshly condemning him, saying, no, I mean, let's be real. Let's really talk about this. This is something bad and evil and wrong. Now, who's going to be my friend as a result of that video? Well, maybe people who agree with me or people who sympathize with me or people who value the honesty. But what possible good would it do for me, for the other person, or for my audience through me being dishonest? And by the way, that's also a great example of theatricality and honesty being compatible. Because it's true, like in that video I'm thinking of where I'm really condemning him, where I'm speaking in an angry or aggressive manner. Of course, it's theatrical. Like I'm not actually angry in a sense. But, what I'm doing is giving voice to something very honest and real. I'm demonstrating, I'm acting out, my convictions or what it is I have to say. So, theatricality is not the enemy of honesty. I think that these things can go together, and it's an important part of democratic and political discourse, both on this kind of personal one-to-one level and when you scale it up.